There is no doubt that lately we can see an upsurge in Islamophobia in America.
I just don't agree with their beliefs.
Okay. Don't they have freedom of religion, though?
They do have freedom of religion just like we do, but that's not what this is about.
Islam was wicked and evil. I don't believe that Muhammad can lead anybody to God. I believe that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life.
Obsession, the threat of radical Islam.
It's not Islamophobia, that it's really Muslim phobia. That what's happening is really a phobia with respect to Muslims, not just a phobia about their beliefs. And what's happened even before 9/11, and now we see it magnified after 9/11, is a form of racism, right? Not just a form of religious discrimination. And I think that's an important distinction to make.
Whatever process that is in play here with Islam and the Muslim is analogous to the process that is at play in racism when it comes to the self versus the other, how the other is constructed. These Islamophobes are creating these divisions that obviously don't need to be there, but they will suffer consequences for.
What is happening with Muslims is not a new storyline in America. It's in fact a very recycled one, around race, around religion, around any kind of other. The challenge that we face in our country today is broader than just Islamophobia, it's one of xenophobia. What's happening with Muslims is directly in line with what's happening with African Americans and with Latinos right now in our country.
Ignorance feeds into fear. This is why children are afraid of darkness, not because darkness is dark, but because they don't know it's there. And we are all children in that aspect. We are afraid of things that we don't know.
We cannot afford to make Islamophobia a single issue. Islamophobia is about xenophobia, and xenophobia is an American issue. The escalation that we have seen in the political discourse around Islam and Muslims has accelerated rapidly since the 2008 elections. And that again, that there is a direct connection between religion being used as a proxy for race.
And there are two types of Islamophobia that exist out there. The first one is the one that is a result of ignorance. You know, when you don't know something, you fear it, especially if somebody feeds you. That, in my opinion, represents the majority of people suffering from Islamophobia today. And we can deal with these people, we can educate them, we should not consider them as part of the other, the enemy, the bigots, and so on. The ones I'm worried about is the small segment, the smaller segment of bigots, anti-Muslim bigots, and that's what they are. They're not just Islamophobes. They're Islamophobes with bigotry, with deliberate efforts to demonize the Muslim community or the followers of Islam. These are people who probably know very well, more than you and I, that there is really nothing to fear from Islam. But it's a deliberate tactic to create that demonization and dehumanization of Muslims.
When people exploit the pain and suffering of 9/11 and drive a wedge to divide our pluralism and try to isolate and stigmatize all Muslims as being responsible for 9/11, that is definitely a deliberate attempt to foment fear about a minority. And that has been done with Jews and Catholics and Mormons in the past.
Fear makes us less safe. Fear makes us make bad decisions with regard to public discourse, politics, and policy formation that not only undermine the rights of vulnerable populations, but undermine our very constitutional values. And that's the way that we have to enter this conversation and work on it as an American issue, not just as an issue of a victimized minority.
Bigotry and hatred is a part of the lineage of this country. It is a part of the fundamental founding of this nation. This nation was founded on the subjugation of an entire continent, and then the subjugation of another people from a different continent.
There is right now in this country the tendency to narrow the public square, to narrow the voices that are acceptable actors in the public square, and to sort of shrink the available choices that communities have for conversations. I think that the challenge of a pluralistic democracy in a global world is to widen the public square, to engage more people in the public processes that affect their lives. That has the great effect of integrating people into a country or into a society or into a way of being.
Our fellow citizens need the reassurances that you mentioned. They need the knowledge, but really they need an experience of being secure around Muslims. And this will not happen without us participating in the American experience, rubbing shoulders with others, working on projects with others. So we put a human face on that ghost that's called Muslim.
When they first see me and they kind of don't really know what to expect when they see me or how I'm going to deal with them. And sometimes I see a little bit of hesitance, but by the time I've done my exam, interacted with the parents, interacted with the child, and by the time I'm leaving the room, I can tell that they have a different impression of what a Muslim is.
I think the bottom line is engagement and more engagement and more engagement. And the people who are not confident enough that they can engage without losing themselves are going to lose themselves one way or the other, even if they sit in their very closed circle. And this is why we find closed circles eventually get divided and internal fighting and ugly things happen.
The mosques that are engaging are surviving this period of crisis, and those that have not engaged or don't know how to engage will not survive.
What happens is that people hear a lot about us, but they really never get a chance to hear from us. To many people, almost 80% of the people that participate in the open mosque day are people who are coming to the mosque for the very first time in their life. People having such strong opinions about what Islam is and who the Muslims are, never having set foot in an Islamic center, to me, that is really irrational.
My name is Maher Hathout. I'm volunteering for Open Mosque Day today. One of the reasons why I'm volunteering is because I want to help break the stereotype. In the media, we're portrayed as being bad people and doing horrible things, and in reality, we're just trying to survive like everyone else.
We are not young in this country. I keep hearing this, like, well, Islam, immigrants have only started coming here like post-World War II. Islam in this continent is older than this country. The African slaves that built Washington, D.C., that built the seats of power in this country, were practicing Islam. Islam was established on this continent at the same time that Christianity was established, prior to Judaism. Now, if we act like we belong here, it'll be much harder for people to tell us we don't. But we need to know our history, and we need to put ourselves in that context. We've been here for hundreds of years, and we're just now starting to realize that we might belong here.
Muslims need to deal with their own fears. The fear that somehow Islam is going to disappear unless the rigid and the traditionalist and things that have to be imitated from what happened 1,000 years ago are going to be implemented or even imposed on our children.
That whole isolation versus assimilation debate is always there amongst Muslim Americans. But I think as the community is maturing, the institutions are being built. You have the schools, the mosques being built now, social service institutions being built, that Muslim Americans need to think on a more proactive level. And so while there's an importance to kind of push back the Islamophobia, there is a whole field of work of actually doing a lot of proactive work in actually making Islamophobia an irrelevant topic to even be brought up, because it reached the community at such a granular level where neighbors, community members, know Muslims that do amazing things in their community, whether they're PTA leaders or they're people who clean up the streets and so forth. It's through that exerted character is exactly how we counter Islamophobia as a true balance.
Islamophobia is a reaction to Americans trying to understand and grapple with globalization and pluralism. It's a negative reaction. The positive reaction has to be both on the side of non-Muslim Americans understanding Islam, understanding their fellow citizens, understanding the ways in which Muslims are a part of society, but also on behalf of Muslim Americans, for them to build the robust communal infrastructure necessary to sustain their engagement over the long term. And that means building organizations that are politically savvy, that address not only the narrow interest of the American Muslim community, but also contribute to the larger issues that affect Muslims, not because they're Muslims, but because they're citizens. The ability to do that is a function of having robust organizations. The only way that we can do that is actually to address the material support clause in the Patriot Act. Muslim organizations operate at a sort of funding disadvantage, at a personnel disadvantage, and in a climate of fear. And there's a structural reason for that, and the reason for that is that Muslim charities have been considered suspect. Until we actually get clarity on what counts as material support and what doesn't, we're going to see the same diminished level of giving from a community that actually has a fair amount of economic power to put behind it. So I think the most important solution to combating Islamophobia is actually a structural solution to increase the ability of Muslims to give to charities that both reflect their own values and contribute Muslim voices.
To combat Islamophobia, on the part of the Muslims, it should be through knowledge and education.